Have you ever fancied seeing a guy in a SpongeBob SquarePants costume attempt to take on a zombie horde? Well, I've got you covered. Hi guys, so the other night I watched Rec 3 Genesis. This one is very much a departure from the first two movies, so we're no longer at the apartment block. The action has now moved to a wedding reception that's taking place at some kind of country estate. I guess they had squeezed as much as they could out of the apartment location and decided it was time to move on. That said, I've got no idea how this film, Rec 3, connects to the first two. So at the end of the second one, Angela was possessed by the devil and she escaped the apartment, but she's not in this one. And the outbreak in Rec 3 is caused by a random uncle turning up at the wedding with a dog bite. That's what he claims anyway. And then he becomes a zombie and the outbreak goes on from there. So how 2 and 3 are linked, I don't know. That information is sort of kept from us. Now, there is a Rec 4. I did watch it once in the past, albeit I was very drunk. I'm going to be rewatching that one in a few days' time, and I'm hoping that it will tie all the loose ends together and make everything make sense. And I do know that Angela from the first two films returns in Rec 4. That gives me further hope that all will be explained. But for now, if you watch Rec 3 having not yet got to Rec 4, then I think you've really got to take this third film just as its own thing and enjoy it for what it is. Not think too much about the fact that we've had two prior films, but there's definitely something weird going on in the background of this, because the Spanish version of the CDC, they are on the scene before the outbreak at the wedding reception has even started. So yeah, there are definitely things that need explaining about this plot, but we're not going to get them today. We're not going to get them in this movie. Something else that's different about Rec 3 is the fact that it's no longer found footage. Now, I've seen a few reviews online that criticise this film for that reason. They think it's straying away from the normal established formula, blah, blah, blah. But I don't mind the fact that it does something different at this stage. I think if you've got a really good found footage film and you try and make a big long-running franchise out of that, I don't think you need to have every single one of the films be found footage. I'm a big found footage fan in general, and probably my favourite of all time is the Blair Witch Project. But if you said to me, oh, how about a new Blair Witch Project in 2022, but it's not going to be found footage, I'd be fine with that. Why not mix it up at this stage, you know? And don't tell me that Blair Witch 2 already did a non-found footage film. I don't count that to be part of the franchise. It was just bloody awful. For me, Blair Witch is just 1 and 3, and there is no number 2. But I certainly don't mind Rec 3 trying this at this point, you know. And I think the way that they do it is quite clever, because the first 10 minutes of Rec 3 are actually still found footage, and then in a really funny scene, the groom at the wedding gets really annoyed that somebody's filming him, and he goes, "Will you stop fucking filming?" and grabs this camera, smashes it on the floor. And the film kind of has no choice at that point but to become non-found footage. But I love that, because how many times in a found footage film does somebody scream at a camera, "Stop fucking filming"? And the cameraman just carries on, and eventually the person screaming is kind of like, oh, whatever, you know. So the way that they make the transition in this, very, very good. It's not like we even get a different director for this one, so it is surprising that they do change direction. You know, you'd think that all this would be happening because there's a new director, a new set of eyes on the overall series, but that's not the case. It's still this guy and his buddy, Paco Plaza, and I'm not sure what the other one is who helps him direct these movies, but he's back again for the third time. So I don't know, did he just get bored of doing found footage and he wanted to do something different, or had he started to become aware of how successful this series was, and maybe he thought or hoped that Hollywood eyes might be on him at this point, and he needed to show that he could be more than just a found footage guy? I don't know. What I do know, amusingly, is that Paco Plaza is married to the lead actress in this film. I can't think of a name off the top of my head, but presumably they met on this movie. Isn't that nice? I do like a good off-screen love story where a director starts sleeping with the much younger lead actress of his movie and they make a go of it behind the scenes. Just gives me the tingles. It's not just the case that this film takes place at a wedding reception and then we forget about that fact once the zombie tag starts. The themes of marriage and love persist all the way through this film, long after the wedding business is forgotten about and we're more concentrated on characters hopefully surviving a bloodbath. Spoiler alert, although I will try and tone it down a little bit, the bride and the groom both survive for most or all of this film. And I sort of had a problem with that the first time I watched this from memory, because these two characters spend a lot of this story on different sides of the grounds in different groups of people, and yet they both just happen to survive for the finale. It's a little bit like Will Smith and his wife in Independence Day. The odds of them both just surviving their two separate situations are quite low when you think about it. But I was willing to give this film a bit more slack on second viewing, because it kind of occurred to me that there is a little bit of a reason why the bride and the groom would be more successful than the other characters in surviving. I just think they're more determined to survive in this. They've got more motivation. If you think about it, it's your wedding day. You know, you've come a long way to get to this point, and this is like the big reset moment in your life. You've met someone special. You're about to go into the second part of your life, bliss and happiness and contentment. And then in the blink of an eye, a zombie outbreak starts at your wedding reception and you're probably going to die. You think, that's really going to piss you off. And I just think the bride and the groom, the way that they act in this, they are just so determined to right this perceived injustice that it really focuses their minds and bodies and gets their legs moving, and they're just so determined to beat this situation. I just think they've got more on the line here than all the other characters, which is an odd thing to say, because all of these people at the country estate, they've all got lives, presumably, they all want to survive, but I just think the bride and the groom want it more, and that just shines through. And a lot of the other characters, they're just a random assortment of aunts and uncles and grands and kids, and there are a few people in there who probably don't have love in their lives, a few people who have it, but their own weddings were a long time ago and the sheen has kind of come off a little bit. So yeah, I think it's not entirely just down to coincidence that the bride and groom make it to the finale. I mentioned aunts and uncles just now. The uncle in this film is absolutely hilarious. I don't believe for a second that he was bitten by a dog, as per his story. I suspect he's saying that just so that people don't think that what actually happened. I don't think people want to hear the truth of what happened to this guy, which is probably that he was bitten by Angela herself, maybe, or maybe a zombie being controlled by some shady government agency. But I'm not going to go too deep into that stuff, because maybe it'll all be explained in Rec 4. I just have a gut feeling that he wasn't actually bitten by a dog, let's just say that much. But the actual character, once the outbreak starts, he's just hilarious, this uncle guy. He wanders around a bit like this. And I just loved the guy. I just thought he was brilliant. He reminded me of a character from an old PS2 game that I used to play called Forbidden Siren. It was a zombie game. And about halfway through that, there was this level where an FMV came on, your character turned around and there was like a zombified gym teacher stumbling towards you, and this guy was going, just like the uncle from Rec 3. Absolutely hilarious. Definitely one of my favourite side characters in this movie. So, criticisms. I've only really got one. So, the runtime for this film is 1 hour 17. Very short. Now, that wouldn't be a problem in and of itself. The first Rec film is about that length, but I didn't mind it for that film because that film is so perfectly paced. It's jam-packed. It's so nicely structured that I wouldn't want to mess with it too much anyway. This film, though, it kind of loses a little bit of tempo, I would say around about the hour mark, just when it's about to head into its last 10-15 minutes. It's like it suddenly runs out of great material, and then it's treading water a little bit, just for that last little stretch until we get to the main credits. Plus, one of the main characters makes a really stupid decision near the end, which is so different from how he's behaved in the film up to that point. And I kind of have a problem with that. So the ending's not as perfect for me as it is with Rec 1 and Rec 2, but everything up to the hour mark, which is most of the movie, I really enjoyed. There's loads of creative things going on in this film. It's not just people running around biting people's necks and then they turn into zombies. If it was just that, then any zombie film would get quite tedious quite quickly. There's lots of imagination that's gone into the writing of this. The SpongeBob character, for example. So there's this random guy. I guess he's at the wedding as a children's entertainer and he's got this big SpongeBob costume on. But when the outbreak starts, he can't take this costume off because he's got no underpants on underneath, apparently. To be fair on him, he couldn't have predicted that this was going to happen. So if you've ever wanted to see how long somebody can survive a zombie outbreak with a big lumbering costume on, watch this film. But it's funny watching him amble around with this thing on, and you're just thinking to yourself, Jesus Christ, you wouldn't want to be him, would you? Also, there's a scene where the groom stumbles into this room with like a display case with some old like armour in it and a shield and a mace. So it's like a medieval display case. It's like a historical little mini museum sort of thing. So he takes this stuff and dresses himself up like a knight, and then he's running around with a mace, like trying to kill zombies with it. But this is the sort of thing that I like in a film like this, you know, something really random and weird that I've not seen before, but just puts a smile on my face. It's really cool. It's not just the same thing that you've seen over and over again, you know, people just shooting zombies in the head and then on we go. The soundtrack's pretty reasonable for this. I guess the fact that we have a soundtrack at all is something of note, given that both Rec 1 and 2 don't really bother with music, but I kind of feel like the music in Rec 3, it's really varied and different all the way through. It's almost a reflection of the personalities of the bride and groom, because on your wedding day, your emotions are all over the place. They're up and down. You know, it's a big, big day. And I just kind of feel like the music in this film is a good representation of that. You know, one minute we get like a cheesy love pop song, and then the next minute we get more of a downbeat horror piano type thing, and then next scene we're going to get something else entirely. It's really all over the place all the way through the film, but I think just about in a good way. It's an interesting soundtrack. It's not one that I would listen to outside of this movie, but I noticed its presence all the way through this, and I did kind of like it. The best scene I should say in this movie though is one involving the bride and a chainsaw. So she randomly finds this thing in a tunnel, and then she takes out some of the zombies with a chainsaw, and it's absolutely brilliant. I absolutely loved that scene. Zombies and chainsaws are an amazing combination. They go together so well. They're like chips and ketchup. They just match. So time for me to show you the version of the film that I've got. Here is my DVD copy of Rec 3, and I think it has a much cooler cover than Rec 1 and 2. You've got the picture of the bride there with her chain, so it's not a picture from the movie, but it's sort of an artist's impression of what goes on in that scene. Absolutely the right choice of cover. I'm sort of glad that they didn't go for the SpongeBob character. I think that could have confused people who were thinking about buying this movie. You'll notice on the front, I've just noticed this just before I turn the camera on actually, it says you are invited to witness the beginning of evil. The beginning of evil? This is the third film. Could that be telling us that this is possibly a prequel to Rec 1 and 2? Don't know. There are 2 hours of special features on this. I didn't actually realise that. I thought it was just going to be bare bones like the first two. But no, there are some features. There's a hint of a documentary and some outtakes, deleted scenes. I haven't checked any of that stuff out. I didn't actually know there were features on this at the time that I was watching it last night. Now, there are some really annoying trailers at the beginning of this particular version. So back when DVDs were a thing, a lot of horror DVDs, they would have trailers on before you even get to the main menu. You can't even avoid them. You just got to sort of skip through them. They're really annoying. I would just rather they put them in the menus and you can access them if you want, but on this version, you've got to sit through 6 trailers just to get to the main menu. I was like, for real? 6 trailers? I mean, even back in the video rental days, I don't think you would have 6 trailers before you actually get to the movie, but hey-ho. Right, let's get to the bag of terror and find out what sort of score I'm going to give this film. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 3.5 bloody axes out of 4, and you know what, I would have gone to 4 out of 5 but for that ending. It just didn't quite work for me in the way that I think the director wanted it to. Yeah, we were very, very close here to having a movie which would have matched Rec 2, but honestly, this series is going great for me. This is the lowest score we've had so far, 3.5 out of 5. I consider this a very good movie. I'm really enjoying watching these, and I can't wait to watch Rec 4 in the next few days at some point when I get the time, and I'm certainly going to do a review for that film. So join me again soon when I do that, and for now, I will leave you with my usual pearl of wisdom. If you're going to get married, don't invite an uncle who has a dog bite on him. Goodbye.